You could look for the other
of intelligence. What you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God. Thank you. You may be seated. James E. Erdman III is a CIA Senior Operations Officer. He's a decorated officer with decades of intelligence and national security experience. Before joining the CIA in 2013, he served with the 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, and as a Foreign Services Officer at the Department of State. He recently completed a joint duty assignment with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence Director Initiatives Group. Mr. Erdman holds a Bachelor of Science in Biology with a minor in Chemistry from Western Oregon University and has received the Director of National Intelligence Award and the CIA Intelligence Medal of Merit. Mr. Erdman, you are recognized for your opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman Paul and other members of the Oversight Committee. Thank you for the complimentary introduction, and I appreciate the committee's dedication to transparency and accountability.
Yeah.
I am a career CIA operations officer, and as you mentioned, I was on joint duty assignment at the Office of Director National Intelligence Directors Initiatives Group, or the DIG, between March 2025 and April 2026. I was responsible for leading the DIG's investigation into COVID origins, anomalous health incidents, and unidentified anomalous phenomena. I'm here today to discuss the COVID cover-up, the national security implications associated with the DIG's investigative findings, and CIA refusal to comply with lawful oversight, as well as how we remedy these problems. Intelligence community leaders and senior analysts downplayed the possibility that the COVID pandemic originated as a result of a lab incident. Motives are difficult to define given the scope of the DIG's review. Intentional or not, the IC's actions resulted in a cover-up, wasted resources, and a failure to properly inform policymakers. Public health policy would have been very different had the American public been made aware that a virus from a lab in China was going to serve as the foundation for an emergency use authorization mRNA products being mandated by the former administration. Dr. Fauci's role in the cover-up was intentional. Dr. Fauci influenced the analytical process and findings by leveraging his position to ensure the IC consulted with a conflicted list of curated subject matter experts, public health officials, and scientists. This included some of the authors of the paper, The Proximal Origin of SARS-CoV-2, and other public health experts who have been in his orbit for the last 20 plus years. Some of the scientists were part of the Biological Sciences Experts Group, or the BSEG, an office of Director National Intelligence Advisory Body, whose members often receive considerable funding from NIAID and public health agencies. The BSEG scientists influenced national laboratory WMD research, policy decisions, finished analysis, and other intelligence matters, creating misaligned incentives and conflicts of interest, as well as counterintelligence issues. Since 2006, the BSEG consulted part-time on biodefense issues for the IC, while conducting government-funded research and holding academia positions, as well as maintaining roles in public health institutions and serving as members in the National Academy of Science. They received funding from NIAID and other agencies for vaccine research, USAID's PREDICT project, the Cooperative Threat Reduction Program. It even worked with Chinese scientists on coronavirus and other pathogen studies pursuing vaccines. There was no oversight monitoring how this web of relationships influenced research, policy, and public health in any holistic way for over 20 years. In fact, several of the BSEC scientists helped Dr. Fauci rewrite definitions of gain of function in 2015 to lift a funding pause on dangerous research. Still others participated in planning Event 201 in 2019. This was a coronavirus pandemic tabletop exercise curiously similar to the events that played out during the COVID-19 pandemic. And it was attended by Dr. Fauci and individuals with IC ties like former DNI Avril Haines. The CIA and DNI analytic managers responsible for examining the origin of COVID made decisions inconsistent with the conclusions of subject matter experts and analytical tradecraft, consistently favoring the theory of zoonosis or natural origin. Following the CIA's COVID relook that culminated in 2023, the CIA retaliated against analysts supporting the lab leak hypothesis. CIA analysts were not bribed. The analysts that supported the 2023 lab leak conclusion took every administrative measure available to them to address their deep concerns regarding the analytic integrity of their finished intelligence. CIA managers retaliated against them for their refusal to agree with management's middle-of-the-night anonymous rewrite of the analysis, which changed.
People ask me all the time, does Lowry and Associates really get all of those clients, all of those big settlements?
Dr. Anthony Fauci's influence over the IC's COVID origin analysis and the witting and unwitting role some BSEG scientists and IC personnel played in the cover-up exposed why this issue is of deep concern. Failure to address the United States government's inability to differentiate between public health and biodefense and the oversight-resistant ecosystem of life science actors has been fertile ground for increasingly dangerous continental United States gain-of-function research, as well as similar research conducted in U.S. government-supported labs abroad. Post-9/11 changes in public health and biodefense roles and responsibilities have blurred the lines between scientists, the military, the intelligence community. It has resulted in a deliberately opaque and excessively redundant biodefense research policy and financial infrastructure, seemingly intended to escalate bureaucratic bloat. This is a national security crisis caused by the inability to provide real oversight. The systematic failures associated with muddled boundaries between biodefense and public health and an overly complex infrastructure have been exacerbated by documented efforts to circumvent oversight. CIA did not comply with lawful oversight during the Diggs investigation. The behavior significantly impacted Director Gabbard's implementation of several EOs issued during this administration and tasked to the dig. The CIA refused to provide information necessary to understand why analytical standards at the CIA were violated. The CIA illegally monitored the computer and phone usage of dig personnel, their investigations, and contact with whistleblowers. These were Americans being spied upon illegally while executing duties directed by the President and under the authority of the Director of National Intelligence. One CIA contractor assisting with the Diggs investigation into the events that transpired between 2022 and 2023 was fired by the CIA one day after meeting with the dig. When the Diggs ceased operations, the CIA also took back 40 boxes of JFK files and MK Ultra files being processed for declassification by DNI Gabbard. The legislative and executive branches will continue to be misinformed if this type of behavior is not addressed.
Yeah, like
The
it's
partial
funding,
solution to
publishing,
dangerous gain of
funding.
function has already been laid out
Yeah, the JFK
in Executive
assassination
Order
and,
14292,
MK, yeah, that's huge.
improving the
those
safety and
funding
security of
lines.
biological research. We need a comprehensive review of government-funded life science research
Yeah, if you
and a
go
move
the
back to
90s,
pre-9/11
looking
definitions
at
of gain
the
of function
earlier
and
ones.
WMD research, particularly in the IC and DHS. More broadly, we need effective oversight. We must hold agencies responsible for failure to comply with Executive Order 14292, and oversight must have teeth. You must be willing to pull the purse strings, and if necessary, convene another church committee. The results of our investigation would have been impossible without whistleblowers willing to come forward. They are indispensable agents for reform. Despite statutory law, agency regulation, and training requirements, whistleblowers are almost never protected. Whistleblower protections always seem to protect the agency. Every time the CIA investigates itself, they coincidentally find no wrongdoing. When they do identify issues, they hold the system responsible. That last statement is a verbatim response from a Europe and Eurasia Mission Center lawyer when the CIA Office of Inspector General did identify shortcomings so serious, oversight bodies were holding meetings about it 3 years after the events transpired. It was in response to the question, was anyone held accountable? Apparently the system is good enough.
Mm-hmm.
The only way
Yeah.
we solve this
Yeah, I'm
issue
doing more of those.
is
Yeah,
with real
that's so
accountability
good.
for failure to comply with executive and legislative branch oversight,
Just kind of basic like
and an escape
stretches and
valve
stuff.
where whistleblowers can continue to contribute to mission free from retaliation. All IG elements need to be removed from the agencies and fall under a separate entity controlled by the IC Inspector General.
Okay,
The personnel in IG
position.
elements should be 1811 certified with regular DOJ and legislative oversight reporting responsibilities. Thank you, and my written statement provides far more details related to
Oh,
these
so much
issues.
better.
I
This
look forward
right
to your
here
questions.
is probably one of the best ones.
Thank you,
for-
Mr.
for
Erdman.
that.
Is it your
Me
testimony
anyway.
that there is still resistance from the
Yeah,
CIA
seems
to
to be
comply
helping
with the
with
law
that.
we passed to declassify all the COVID information?
To help
Yes.
loosen. Right, relieving pressure and loosening. It's
One
two
of the
totally
things
different
that
kinds.
I think is new today that I'm hearing from your testimony is
Yeah.
that from an early period of
Yeah, to know
time,
the difference. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to tell.
you believe, and the information you're aware of, is that CIA scientists from an early time after the
It's be
pandemic
okay with
began,
that.
2020,
Go ask
2021,
Am I loose or
were
tight?
concluding that the lab leak was the most likely hypothesis.
Yes, Senator, I'd like to offer some qualifications on that as well. A lot of the issues
Wait.
occurred at the interagency space,
What is
at the
that?
National Intelligence Council, the individuals responsible for conducting or writing
know what I
WMD analysis. So, and many of those individuals are on JDA from the CIA. But yes, very early, as early as 2020, there were
Yeah, it's almost as though,
agencies
like, the
within
whole,
the IC
What's making me
circulating
sad?
papers
Okay,
that,
the doctor. Well, let's talk about
that
it.
said,
and they
hey,
might be
there's,
able to find
for example,
some.
DOE circulated a paper in May
things
of
that-
2020
But
that said
really,
that all the conditions were present for a
that
lab leak.
actually doesn't make people feel sad.
And I could
Did
go through the
something
timeline,
happen?
but yes, my short answer is yes. Periodically throughout 2020, all
That
the
would
way to
maybe give you some
2024.
kind of a phobia.
Yes.
I think the arguments, pro and con for what is the evidence on whether this came from a lab or came from nature are still important. So for years, we've been asking the CIA to produce the scientists,
You're not allowed to talk
either in a
about
classified setting or a public setting,
Well,
to
it's
discuss
just me
the
and you
arguments.
here. You know,
I
I
don't see
think
any
I'm
reason why the
beginning to
arguments
face
should
some
be
of the issues.
classified.
Hold on.
You know, one of the arguments that's
All we
made
can do is
publicly
medicate
is
it,
that
huh? We can't
the
really help with
source
those
looks like it
issues,
came
can
from a
we?
single source of
Let's might as well
RNA,
medicate
not like
it
5
into which
different
the
types of
environment
viruses or
is,
20 different types like you had
apparently
with
cannot
SARS 2003, but it
Well,
came
it
from
can
one
be.
source. And virtually everybody argues that sort of
has to go to
indicates a
work.
lab and not a nature. And so those arguments are important scientific
Something.
arguments to have, but we've been prevented from having them. We've been preventing from getting all of the declassified information. But what I think is of importance that's new today is that your testimony is that the CIA scientists were concluding that it
We
was
do little-
lab,
sometimes
but
we
then
hit
with
little
this,
bursts
there was a
and little
90-day
tangents.
study in 2021.
Yeah, some of our
And this study
listeners
was
just look
done
for
by
material for their
NIC,
show.
led by NIC. Tell us what NIC is again.
It's the National Intelligence
They use it
Council.
all the time.
Individuals
They said it's
responsible
great. They
for
said
writing
some of the
various WMD
stuff
and,
they use that they
and
hear
bio-related
from us.
issues.
It's
like
some
that.
of the
So when
most
they
The
have
best part about
Wow.
Russell Stover
So
sugar-free
cool.
candies. No sugar,
Cool.
great taste, guaranteed.
the lab, but then they brought in Anthony Fauci. And is it your opinion that Anthony Fauci was able to overrule the scientist or get NIC to conclude somehow that there wasn't a conclusion to be had here, we're going to be neutral, contradicting what the scientists were telling them?
So there's two questions there, and I want to break them up into two. One is, where were the injection points, Dr. Anthony Fauci? Where did Dr. Anthony Fauci and when did he inject himself into the IC? And the other half of that question, if I'm, and I don't want to extrapolate too much here, is okay, what happened with why was there a change in analysis? So I'll start with if it's okay, Dr. Paul.
Sure.
Senator, I'll start with Dr. Anthony Fauci. There were two instances. On 3 February 2020 and 4 June 2021, Anthony Fauci had contact with the interagency. And how to sort of broadly generalize this is that contact was happily pursued within the IC. They wanted that contact. And he provided a curated list of subject matter experts, which coincidentally wrote the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2. So it's not like he came in and said, you have to do X, Y, and Z, provided recommendations. It's when you look at what has already been publicly released about Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
And then
huh?
what you're
Rest of
seeing
week
under the
is
curtain at the IC, where you realize, okay,
overcast
there is a
and
narrative
rainy.
that was being generated by his contact,
Yeah.
not just with experts here in the United States, but experts in Australia and the UK. And that's the public-facing piece. And, you know, he had tried to sort
I
of keep
was
his
so
hands
glad we did.
clear
I
of,
almost
I
didn't,
didn't
too,
have anything to
thinking
do
it
with the
was
proximal origin
I'm
of
so
SARS-CoV-2. But in the meantime, he's pushing those authors and individuals that have been in his orbit into the IC as experts. And I'll jump to June 2021. We,
I didn't. I thought
we
I
as the
showed
IC at the NIC
Just the what?
happily
Oh,
pursued
okay, yeah.
those recommendations.
I'll show you the ones.
And in one email, which I'll describe to you, the person in charge of leading the 90-day study, he introduced himself to the community
like
that,
kind of black and gold
on
one is
what they were supposed to be doing, and then the community he said, listen, we've got these people we should be talking to, and another very senior NIC officer sent a direct email to him saying, hey, considering that Dr. Fauci is a public health expert, are you sure we should be relying on this? Shouldn't we have a separate set? And in this instance, the individual responded, no, in this case, Dr. Anthony Fauci is a subject matter expert. However, that's directly contradicting his public testimony of being a subject matter
Part of
expert.
the job in intelligence when you interview someone is assessing their truthfulness, their potential biases or conflicts of interest. Did anyone ever bring up that Anthony Fauci approved the research that went on in Wuhan and that it might not be in his interest for the conclusion to be that it came from a lab that he had funded, that there might be a conflict? Did anybody ever bring up that he might not be an objective witness?
That was one example of an email. No one laid it out quite that clearly. You're piecing it together. We were piecing it together from multiple emails, from multiple agencies, multiple documents. It was more subtle than that. Nobody said, this is happening And unfortunately, I think they probably should have. It was all out there.
But your conclusion is that changing from the scientific consensus of it being from a lab to a neutral position by the CIA was significantly influenced by Anthony Fauci?
It was significantly influenced by Anthony Fauci's injecting himself into the IC. And to go to the second part of your question about what happened, particularly during the 90-day study, we have documentation that shows that as of August 12th, the CIA was considering calling this a lab leak, August 12th of 2021. And then that changed on August 17th of 2021. Right. And unfortunately, because the CIA would not provide us documentation that we asked for, we have no idea why that changed. And that's
And they weren't alone, because we know the FBI was coming to the same conclusion that it was lab leak, as well as the FBI. Senator Ernst?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really appreciate you being here today. I know that this has been a topic for many of us for many years, and we continue to get pushback from the federal government as we're trying to uncover the truth to this matter. For years, folks who discussed a possible COVID lab origin were dismissed as conspiracy theorists. They were censored. Some were even fired from their jobs. If there was or is a conspiracy, then U.S. government officials and U.S.-funded scientists keeping secrets should be publicly questioned under oath about what they knew and when they knew it. But U.S.-funded scientists somehow are still protected from being questioned publicly, even though they received millions of taxpayer dollars from NIH, DHS, DOE, and DOD. And look, folks, I've long warned about a potential government cover-up of the truth, which our brave witness, again, thank you, Mr. Erdman, has confirmed to us today. I've called for answers from Dr. Ralph Barrick, an expert virologist who showed the intelligence community in January 2020, before the American people knew about the pandemic, that, quote, "We may be on the verge of a global pandemic," end quote. Yet nothing was done to share this information with the American people. I exposed that the Wuhan lab received $1.4 million in federal funds, fought to cut off every single cent flowing to that lab, and I won on this for the taxpayers. And I haven't backed down from fighting for more information on the true COVID origins. And yet Congress is still here, 6 years later, begging agencies to share answers and for committees to make relevant documents public. We are tired of Washington cover-ups. And if they aren't our screw-ups here in the U.S., why would the U.S. government cover up for the CCP and other countries? So, Mr. Erdman, Americans would have been angry to learn in early 2020 that their government may have played a role in COVID-19's creation. Would you say such thinking influenced the intelligence community to suppress a lab leak origin theory?
I would say that there's evidence in the emails that it was part of the calculus. I wouldn't say, so it's very difficult, it's more subtle.
Okay.
There's sort of a zeitgeist that runs underneath the analysis, and I'll provide a conversation I had with one of our whistleblowers, and I asked, and this individual is an incredibly talented scientist, and I asked that individual, why don't you actually go forward, go public? There's a lot of reasons not to do that. There's a whole bunch. His comment was, nobody wanted the lab leak conclusion, and I'm concerned that there's too many people willing to make excuses for China in this organization for the wrong reasons. That was pervasive. And so the individuals we talked to, they never said, one for one, it's because they disliked the sitting president, or they were trying to cover up like managers were trying to cover up for China, but it was a pervasive undercurrent, is how they described it. And I think to answer your question, there's certainly reluctance would be geopolitically destabilizing or provide ammunition for actions that maybe they thought would be unwise. Did I answer your question, Senator?
Yes, you did. And it's troubling to hear that there's an undercurrent of making excuses for China as well. Deeply troubling. We spend millions of dollars to have an early warning intelligence system. And yet today I'm hearing the system may have been alerted, but no one was acting on the information. Do you think that's an accurate statement?
I can't speak to the health agencies. I can say that the IC was certainly aware early on that it looked like there might be an issue. And so the intelligence that had come in, I don't think they sat on it. I don't think they sat on the intelligence. Now, that speaks to maybe a broader issue with the interaction between IC elements and non-IC elements. Maybe there's some improvements that could be made there, but I didn't see the IC sitting on information extraordinarily long.
Okay, it could have been agencies then extraneous to the IC.
Right, and you know, the bureaucracy is real. I mean, it's just every day sometimes feels like a fight just to get simple things done, and that's just part of working in a large organization. So I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying from the intelligence perspective, I think they identified fairly quickly that this might be an issue.
Mm-hmm. And with this as an issue, typically we go back, we do after action reviews. Do you think this is something that the U.S. government has learned from? I see you grimace. Maybe share a little bit about that, because if this is system-wide across the federal government, you know, how do we stop this from happening again? What lessons have we learned from this, if any? You're still coming forward as a whistleblower. So what have we taken away from this, and how do we prevent this from happening in the future, whether it's, you know, the spread of a pandemic or, you know, what happened within the agency?
So I really don't want to go beyond IC too much, because I'm not part of like the health establishment. I'm not in that organization. But part of the reason the DIG was pulled together as a task force, it was a temporary tool to perform something like an after action review and get at the bottom of what happened. And if you're asking me, did we learn anything? Well, the problem is we did not receive support from the CIA in terms of, and I've documented in my transcribed interview, and I don't want to go into the specifics of that, but there were very specific lists of information we needed so that we could put into context what happened. And so, no, I don't think we've learned our lesson when it comes to transparency and reform. We didn't get the documents we needed. Senator, your committee issued, 14 subpoenas in January of 2025 requesting documents, and Director Gabbard did her absolute best to try and force the IC to start producing these documents. And a bunch of them got sent over to ODNI, but we still didn't get all of them. And so what I'll say is, like, we did not get the documents we needed from the CIA, state INR, and so the lessons in terms of transparency and reform, I don't think those occurred. And they can only occur, if we actually do a full review of what happened during COVID. And again, there's a fair question. How long do you want to be backwards leaning looking at COVID? That's a fair question. You only have limited resources, limited time, limited personnel, and we have limited experts that work within the CIA, and they've got forward-facing threats. The reason COVID is so important is because what we did find is that there is a much larger meta problem sitting on top of COVID. The fact that we have these scientists, and again, I'm not vilifying any of these scientists we contracted in to come to the IC. We desperately need their expertise. And so when we invite them in, we're inviting them in because we want their help. And so we need them. But those same scientists, it's this ecosystem that has a lot of money involved. They're involved with the National Academy of Science, for example, some of them. And, National Academy of Science also helps with our WMD policy for the U.S. government. Unfortunately, the National Academy of Science also has a great number of Chinese researchers that co-publish. And so if we're not careful, we're going to have Chinese researchers helping us draft U.S. WMD policy. That's not a good thing. You've got the Counter Threat Reduction Program that involves some of these IC scientists. And once you start cross-pollinating like that, being able to tease out and really provide proper oversight becomes so difficult. And you're talking about also multiple funding streams from multiple different places. It's a very complex problem. COVID, we need the AAR so that and it already pointed to the bigger problem, so maybe that's enough, but we need that.
Thank you, Mr. Erdman. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Ernst, one thing I would interject as far as lessons from my perspective is the scientists overseeing gain of function research can't be the scientists receiving the money.
Right.
So we voted last year on the Risky Research Review Act. It'd be a presidential commission, but the scientists that oversee gain of function would not be receiving NIH grants. Part of it is that Fauci had a fiefdom, this enormous fiefdom, and he was controlling the funds, but then there was a danger of that he doles it out to people who agree with him, and I think that was happening.
Yeah,
Senator Moreno.
Point well taken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Erdman, first of all, thank you for your service to our nation in the past, current, and future. Quick question for you, because I've obviously never been in the CIA. Is it easy to be a whistleblower? Is it easy to kind of think about, hey, I'm going to go outside the normal chain of command, or does it come with personal risk, career risk, et cetera?
I do not believe whistleblower protections are sufficient to protect whistleblowers.
So it's not easy. So it's not easy for you to be here, especially you're serving now today. What is your reaction when you look at the dais and you see that there's not a single solitary Democrat member here to listen to your testimony? How does that make you feel?
My goal in being here is threefold. I want to talk about COVID.
No, I get that, but I'm saying. But
I wish they were there. I wish they were there.
You're taking personal risk. You're serving the country. You're not partisan. This is not about politics, but somehow it's become about politics because the Democrats don't even want to hear the conversation about what obviously was a grave error that this country made during COVID. And unlike previous situations, there's never been a situation, certainly not in my lifetime, where you had decisions made that affected generations of Americans, kids that were absolutely deprived of their childhood, businesses that were destroyed, families that were torn apart, memories that you'll never get back, trillions of dollars of economic loss. We should at least have a conversation that isn't partisan. And yet, just for the record, there's not a single solitary Democrat senator that's willing to sit in this chamber and listen to your testimony. I think that's an outrage and an insult to people like you. So I'm going to bring a little more levity to what I just said. Back in June of 21, you talked about that, which is interesting. June of 21. I remember June of 21 as something that came up during a comedy show. I'm not somebody who listens to Stephen Colbert, but he had Jon Stewart on, and he said, I'm paraphrasing Jon Stewart, I will not deliver it with the same kind of comedic punch, but it said, oh my God, there's been an outbreak of chocolatey goodness near Hershey, Pennsylvania. What do you think happened? Like, oh, I don't know, maybe the steam shovel mated with a cocoa bean, or it's maybe the expletive deleted chocolate factory, maybe that's it. And simple joke, talking about, or maybe the simplest solution is maybe the virus leak happened from the virus lab in the city of Wuhan.
Naked and Afraid goes global.
World resulted in this virus. What ended up happening is that Jon Stewart was immediately tortured. The Washington Post called his joke a dangerous weapon of propaganda. They called him conspiratorial, and he got massive personal backlash. That was in June of 21. So does it turn out that the chocolatey goodness came from the chocolate factory in Hershey, Pennsylvania?
Yeah, just as Director Ratcliffe said in 2020, it sure looks like the chocolatey factor factory is actually where the chocolate came from.
Yeah, and in fact, it's funny that we're all sitting here today because in that same torture of Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert said that maybe Jon Stewart was somehow a spy of Senator Johnson, because Senator Johnson was the one senator that was saying this from the very beginning, has continued to hold that accountability, and I applaud Senator Johnson for his absolutely relentless pursuit of the truth in all this. But let me just spend the last few minutes here talking to you about something that you mentioned, which is near and dear to my heart. And I think all these hearings are important. You said is super critical, and again, I applaud you for taking and having the courage to come here and your detailed and methodical review of all this. But where's the accountability? This is what I hear from my constituents all over Ohio. Is like, great, you got a hearing, you said this and that happened, but they want to see the perp walks. Where are the people who made these decisions, and how do we hold them accountable? Anthony Fauci is sitting, probably sipping margaritas somewhere with his multi-million-dollar financial success as a result of duping the American people into putting an experimental virus in a vaccine into their bodies, or risk losing their jobs. He's not accountable to anybody. He's having a great life. He was featured on Vogue magazine. He sat there for a cover shot for a day, trying to get beauty shots of him, which I imagine the photographer found difficult. Where do you think that we are on a path to accountability?
So I don't work at DOJ, and so I can't speak to prosecutions or perp walks or any of that stuff. But what I'll say is, and I want to go back to the first thing you mentioned here about the American public. I think, and this is my opinion, I'm not expressing myself as a CIA officer or on loan to DNI, whatever it is. I think we really want both Democrats and Republicans to show up and communicate and cooperate on issues, because part of the most important, and you all know this, legislative branch, they have some power of oversight. You guys are not, you can't make DOJ prosecute anybody. You can reach across the aisle, and you can try and get these people to pull the purse strings when agencies are behaving poorly. And, from my perspective, and I don't mean to criticize anyone, we need the legislative branch to start pulling purse strings. It's got to be with teeth if you want accountability. And this is perfect. This forum here is perfect. It's about the transparency piece. Can't act unless people know. On the accountability side, I can tell you that Director Gabbard is doing her best to pursue accountability with all of the investigations that were undertaken by the DIG. And, we can serve everything up, and it's up to DOJ to take action at that point. And I can't speak to DOJ, but yeah.
No, I understand that, and I think what the American people would even expect at a minimum is just an apology for putting the country through this, not giving the proper information. I think that would go a long way. But certainly there was clearly bad actors. Mr. Chairman, you talked about the conflicts of interest. The way you described it was very nice, but ultimately it's corruption. I mean, when somebody's getting paid to give an opinion that's not fact-based, and it leads to personal gain, that's just flat-out corruption. And what makes America unique is that we don't allow that kind of corruption in our government. And so I think ultimately where this all has to land is there has to be explicit accountability for individuals who profited off of the misinformation, the shaming of Americans, and the systematic destruction of lots and lots of things in this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
They'll say they're
Thank you,
crazy kooks who are listening.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and another excellent hearing.
Yeah, we just find people.
I feel your pain and frustration in terms of trying to do oversight investigation and issuing subpoenas that are not responded to, certainly not in full, barely responded to generally. What responses we get are generally non-responsive responses, just a bunch of bureaucratic gobbledygook. So, again, I appreciate your efforts, though. Mr. Erdman, I appreciate you coming forward. One thing I know as former chairman of the full committee, now as the chairman of the subcommittee investigations, is we do not protect whistleblowers. We have laws dating back over 100 years, and the government is the worst offender in terms of retaliating against whistleblowers, even though there's all kinds of these legal protections. So I appreciate you doing this.
They'll like kind of take their.
I'll also note, because nothing shocks me anymore with our colleagues from the other side of the aisle, but I'm shocked that not one of them showed up here.
Their mental health is
I think one showed up to register as tenants and then gone.
The private investigator.
I agree with you. It is well past time for us to have a church committee. We're not going to get bipartisan support for a church committee. There's no curiosity on the other side about what's happening inside the deep state. And that's really my question. Who is running the deep state? I've got example after example and agency after agency.
Yeah, disclosure and all that stuff.
Very legitimate oversight requests. I subpoena documents. You don't get squat. Now,
dare I say basics?
I asked for your testimony last night, and I realized, and I really appreciate the fact that the committee staff and Chairman Paul is very, very concerned about retaliation against you. Apparently, they didn't clear your testimony here at the CIA. Is that true?
No.
So you're appearing as a true whistleblower, publicly right off the bat. I'll do, and I'm sure Senator Paul and the staff will do everything we can to prevent retaliation. But what is your game plan after this? You're done with the in DNI and the DIG organization. What do you plan going back to CIA?
I returned to CIA on, April? I'm back at CIA. I just took a couple weeks vacation after it was a long year and I was tired, so I took some time off.
So were you welcome back?
I just arrived and I've got a desk and they're talking to me about what comes next.
I mean, do you have any concerns about me keeping this? Because originally we said you can't keep this after the hearing, but it sounds like now I can keep it. I mean, do you have a concern? Because I don't want to harm you in terms of what you've written here. I haven't had a chance to go through it yet.
You can keep it.
Okay. Should we distribute this publicly?
Please hold on that.
For the time being, I will. John Radcliffe was very helpful when he was in that position at DNI. Now he's director of the CIA.
They would go back and forth.
What is preventing the CIA from totally cooperating with the DNI?
I don't know.
What would you say? You've been in the CIA. Who's running this show?
Here's what I'll say. We had requests. We have a formal process that we sent those requests over, and I detailed in the transcribed interview the dates and what those requests were for. It appeared to be bureaucratic slow rolling until the government shutdown happened.
Well, that is the technique they use.
Yes.
I mean, they look at every administration or every director of CIA, and if they don't agree with them, this too shall pass, right? They just wait them out. I mean, that's happening right now in both of our investigations. So, again, I'm calling for a church-like commission. We'll call it the Paul Johnson Commission, okay? We need to figure out who runs the deep state. But in my...
When the breakwater collapsed, it brought a tremendous amount of uncertainty to our community as it brought a halt to most...
Yeah, as someone was saying, back around 2008-9, a lot of those doctors and people that were screaming out about the dangers with vaccines and the hepatitis shot, the vitamin K, all those issues, and Lyme and bioweapons talk was going rampant. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting books on that stuff. Hold on. Well, yeah, they were just wanting to kind of mention it back at that time. A lot of the doctors and people, professionals, good people, they knew exactly what they were talking about. And everything they said has been proven to be true. Yeah, I mean, but like we said, some of them, they were literally throwing themselves on the ground, like at our feet, like, please, you gotta stop them. I remember like being scared, like, why are these kind of level of people saying this to us? What's going on? Yeah, it was scary. And it was just, when you're in contact with those kind of people, it was more just general conversation, and then as they would be talking about it, some of them would get pretty upset and literally get down on their knees and pray. They were talking about the dangers of the hepatitis, was it hepatitis B? And the vitamin K shot. They were saying this is going to cause major blood clots and health issues. They were right. Right, and now that's being blamed on the COVID vaccine. Oh no, it's not from that, it's from this. Right, which is, when you look at what's in the COVID vaccine, it is exacerbating the blood clots. So yes, but it's not the original cause. I mean, people that are getting the worst blood clots, look into if they got the vitamin K shot. Or have high levels of that, or something. Was it K2 or something? Yeah, there's a few other things too. I mean, I'm just kind of speaking off the wall here or there, take it with a grain of salt, but yeah, so those people that were speaking out about that stuff, they were getting called granolas, Karens, right, the goons and the idiots who are attacking and targeting them, because you gotta stop these psychos. And then when people were trying to bring attention to that, they switched the rhetoric and put the Karen label upon, like, oh, people that want to color their hair and septum rings. And they switched the narrative a little bit, and the original tones got changed, as usual with anything else, like production lines, early onset production lines when it comes to anything. But yeah, they just wanted to mention that. I get why. Yeah, no, I think that's important stuff to understand. Yeah, for people to realize how many, so many people, such as all of these people, speaking out, trying to bring awareness. My gosh, how can you not want to help that, Be the wind beneath their wings. They are soaring. What are you doing? Oh, okay.
CNN last week. And I sent him my report.
Yeah, we're going to do some reading in a little bit.
Commission, okay? We need to figure out who runs the deep state. But in my final 3 minutes, because I held what I thought was a blockbuster hearing 2 weeks ago.
It was very good.
And this is on my investigation in terms of the...
It's this thing. And look, it has little pieces you can change the top. So you can have this one, which does more if you have like rough spots and buffing and stuff. Yeah. See how it has the light? I like how it has the light. Yeah. And I like how it has this little thingy, because you can get right under the nail and stuff. Yeah. This thing is awesome. Professional manicure and pedicure. I believe I got this at Walgreens for $20 maybe. It's called Flawless.
harms done by the COVID injection. And I'm going to talk about it right now because it's not being covered by the legacy media. Alternate media, yes. Fox News, Fox Business has had me on. I went on, supposed to be on CNN last week. And I sent them my report and told them that's what I want to talk about. They canceled the appearance. Oh, that's not why. Sure it is. So this is what, and I can do this in 2 minutes and 20 seconds. This is what we uncovered. This is what is being covered up by now the legacy media. On March 1st of 2021,
and then what they choose to fill this
Dr. Peter Marks, head of CBER, the organization within FDA that approves vaccines and also supposed to surveil those vaccines post-market for safety, was given a multi-page briefing by the main data mining analyst within FDA working with the inventor of the algorithm they used to analyze the VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. That briefing told Dr. Marks that the current algorithm, because of the nature of the massive number of claims coming into VAERS, by the way, from 1990 until 2020, on average, about 280 deaths were reported in VAERS associated with the vaccine. 2021 is over 21,000. Nothing to see here. But anyway, so they're using an algorithm. They were warned that this algorithm, because the Moderna and Pfizer are so close together, the way they're analyzing is going to mask and hide safety signals. That's March 1st, 2021. 26 days later, a new state-of-the-art algorithm, developed by the inventor of the original algorithm, was presented to senior FDA officials, showing 49 cases of extreme masking, 25 safety signals, including sudden cardiac death, pulmonary infarction, Bell's palsy, different types of strokes. Month after month after month, they continue to do this data mining. They continue to show additional safety signals. Did Peter Marks, did Anthony Fauci, did President Biden go to the American public and say, hang on here, we've got some data, we've got some concerns? No, no. They blamed the unvaccinated for continuing the pandemic. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. We need to mandate this. This is what government does. This is what the deep state does. I can't explain it all. My investigation now, because I finally got documents. This would never have happened if we didn't.
Deergo Federal Credit Union was born and raised here in Maine. And like Mainers, we're built on grit.
That now has resulted in prosecution where, he has a FOIA lead, showed him how to make emails disappear, send me something sensitive to my Gmail. We have the same types of evidence in our report. We need to get to the bottom of this, and right now I'm just using this moment. I need the mainstream media, CBS, ABC, CNN, to step forward and start covering what is a major stand. How many thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of people are permanently disabled or possibly lost their life because our FDA hid the fact that there were safety signals screaming at them with the COVID injection. So again, you can't answer all my questions in terms of but we need to figure out who is running this deep state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Johnson, I completely concur with the
Listen again.
Investigation now because I finally got documents. This would never have happened if we didn't have documents. And by the way, just like we found that David Morin's email that now has resulted in prosecution where, he has a FOIA lead, showed him how to make emails disappear, send me something sensitive to my Gmail. We have the same types of evidence in our report. We need to get to the bottom of this, and right now I'm just using this moment. I need the mainstream media, CBS, ABC, CNN, to step forward and start covering what is a major stand. How many thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of people are permanently disabled or possibly lost their life because our FDA hid the fact that there were safety signals screaming at them with the COVID injection. So again, you can't answer all my questions in terms of but we need to figure out who is running this deep state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Johnson, I completely concur with the call for a church committee, but I'll tell you how difficult it is. Church committee was like 1975, 50 some odd years ago. I've been trying to get the classified version of the church committee for over 2 years. But I've been blocked by the Intel committee, including someone from our own party is blocking having me. They've shown me a room with 400 boxes, and I can go look in all the boxes to see if I can find it. My staff's not allowed to go in the room, but they will not reveal to me something that's 50 years old that should be declassified for the public, much less for me.
Maybe we should go together. It probably only takes us about 4 or 5 years to dig through all the boxes.
That's right. Senator Holling.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Erdman, thank you for being here. In March of 2023, the Senate unanimously passed legislation requiring the Office of the Director of National Intelligence to declassify all, I believe the exact language is, declassify any and all information related to potential links between the Wuhan Institute of Virology and the origins of COVID-19. I have some familiarity with this legislation because I wrote it. It passed the House unanimously. President Biden signed it into law under, I think, popular duress. As you may remember, well, first of all, are you familiar with this law?
Oh, of course, yes.
As you may recall, it set a statutory deadline of just a couple of months later, which the Biden administration promptly ignored and blew through. When they finally did release the report, I think we've got a picture of it here that'll appear over my shoulder. It was all of 5 pages. Yeah. Here it is. Wait for it.
Yeah.
5 pages. Remember, the law says any and all information. 5 pages, heavily redacted, even the 5 pages. I think one of those pages is like a cover note or something. Yeah, here it is. The executive summary, 5 pages. This is, according to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, this is any and all information related to COVID-19 and the Wuhan Virology Lab. Now, you've been on this task force that has reviewed these documents. Is this all the information the United States government had?
That is not all of the information. And I'll tell you a little story about that if you'd like.
Please.
A story about your 5 pages there. So there was a classified report being written at the time all of this was going on. And I assumed as I'm reading through the documents that they would just take that classified report, which didn't look like that, and they would just redact it. And because I'm reading through the documents, but that is not what happened. They decided to write a different paper instead of what was already.
Who you say they? Who's they?
The National Intelligence Council.
The National Intelligence Council was at the time that the law passed was doing a thorough review, or doing a review. We don't know how thorough. How many pages? You've been on this task force. You've gotten a sense of, if it's not 5 pages, how many pages worth of information would you guess the United States government was in possession of related to Wuhan lab and COVID possible links?
I can tell you that Director Gabbard is working through, I believe, 2,000 pages.
2,000?
They're trying to get released in the first batch. This is the law states yes, any and all, but there's still the requirement to run it through the different agencies to ensure that there's not some sources and methods. But there's like 2,000 pages.
2,000 pages. 2,000 pages. I want to show you what Admiral Haynes, Director Haynes, said to me when I wrote to her, Senator Braun and I wrote to her following this outrageous, ridiculous report. She wrote back to me and said, well, we declassified only what we could without endangering sources and methods. Only what we could. 5 pages of summary that itself has redactions. The 5 pages have redactions. And you're telling me there are literally thousands of documents. Why are they hiding all of this material?
I can tell you that the interagency process of declassification is highly bureaucratic, and that is being worked. And I think you saw just a few days ago, Director Gabbard released some information about the lab.
Was Director Haynes, Admiral Haynes, was she involved in making the decision not to release the material?
I don't have any proof that she was involved in the direct decision. I have no emails saying that directly, but
it was her office, and it's her signature on the letter to me. It's her office that sent the 5 pages. She's the one who said, this is what we have. This is all we have. You're telling me there were 2,000 plus documents.
I'm
they
telling
sent
you
us
that
5.
the first swath of documents that we're looking to, there's many more than that.
I got you. Many more. Let me tell you what this so-called 5-page report, what it said in its substance, to the extent there was any. They said, number one, that nothing that was researched at the Wuhan lab could plausibly be a progenitor of SARS-CoV-2. Number two, they said there is no evidence of any research-related incident involving Wuhan employees that might have been related to the pandemic. Now, in your experience, given what you have seen, are those true statements?
Some of that would have to be covered and classified, but no, they're not true. If we wanted to get into details, I don't believe that's true.
So the United States government first deliberately violated a law passed by Congress, signed by the President, that ordered them to release all information related to the Wuhan lab, number one. Number two, they then violated the law again by withholding thousands of